Today, you're going to hear a pretty unique take on what I think about leadership. It's going to be leadership from a perspective of some things that you've heard, some things that you haven't heard, and a little bit in between. So, the first thing I want to say is that leadership didn't start when people listened to me, it started when people started depending on me. Um, that's just a radical change from most people thinking that leadership has to be and or is um, telling people what to do and or being that forceful leader. It starts with responsibility. um, Even in the scripture, 1 Timothy 3:5, it says, "For if someone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he care for God's church?" If you think about it, that scripture had to do with building leaders. From my experience, leaders are more of a function, kind of a part of the whole. And if you think of it in that way, and you recognize that there's actually burden that goes along with leadership. Most people feel like they're ready to lead or they want to lead, but I contend that you actually have to start with leading yourself, a level of responsibility that leadership didn't begin with influence or a platform or, just started out in this kind of flowery recognition of oneself. It actually started from the very beginning. Mother, father, them giving giving a young man a level of responsibility. And just so we're clear, I'm going to be speaking to young men because I believe that is the catalyst, that is the absolute need in our society today, in our homes, in our churches, in our and leadership with character, in business, in government, and all of the different things in between. So that's where I'm going to be landing my hat, starting and leading throughout all of these conversations that we're going to have. And the first part where that starts, where I let off a few seconds ago, was family. If you look at where leadership begins, where you find that level of responsibility, it's in the home. Back in the day, fathers were probably the primary breadwinners. Mothers were working too, but in a different capacity. And fathers would have to bring their sons along. They started to learn leadership early, level of responsibility, whether it was on a farm, shoveling snow or lifting hay or whatever the case may be, or even in a city context where a father might, if he had a business or if he had a job where he was able to take his son with him to the office so he can see how things are done. And he might give him responsibility of getting his own paper route or washing cars or lemonade stand. There's a responsibility there. That's a level of learning how to lead in that perspective. It didn't come with trinkets and immediate notoriety. A lot of times it starts in the quiet of your home when no one else is looking. The one thing that I recognized is that leadership really, really exposes a man in the home. It really does. For better or for worse. If you have a wife, if you have children, there's a delicate balance with providing all that a family needs from a financial or protection standpoint. But in addition to that, that spiritual side, that emotional side, the thing that you actually are working on as a young man by yourself, and in a family, it takes on a whole new aspect. And I know that I jumped from, being a child to having children. But when you get the chance to see that on both perspectives, both angles, you'll recognize that there's a lot that is, fluid within that. You recognize what leadership looks like from above, and then you can kind of, even in a company, and then you can kind of recognize
work
what
for
the
you.
folks. You can see their perspective on things. It's a very, very important thing to have a level of responsibility. I mean, you can't be a leader without being a follower first. That's just something that I've seen. You look at any leader worth their salt. I know there's a lot of people who are in leadership positions who may seem like they don't qualify, or they don't have a level of humility, or they don't have a level of discipline when it comes to leading people in the right way, leading with character, leading with honor, but also being forceful. I mean, you have to set standards. And so there's always that delicate balance when it comes to leadership. With all that being said, leadership changes when you take on that accountability, when you actually accept it, when the buck begins and ends with you. And that is in the smallest to the greatest of responsibilities, whether you're in a Fortune 500 company, whether you're running your own business, whether you're in your job, whether you're in college, whether you are, in grade school and having the responsibilities that your parents have given you at home, whether you're just responsible for yourself, waking yourself up on time, grooming yourself. All of those things build to what a leader should be. They should be forging you and shaping you in the way that you need to go. One thing I want to leave you with is, if you can't lead yourself at home, the world will lead you and judge you, and harshly at that. You won't have time to, have a bit of reprieve, or have someone having your back, like your family, or someone taking care of you. So you need to recognize that leadership is definitely a level of responsibility and commitment that requires sacrifice. And if you're not willing to sacrifice, if you're not willing to see others outside of yourself, because leadership is definitely a selfless act. And like I said earlier, leadership has to do with being in a function. It's a function of the whole, a function of a greater part, because you can't be a leader without those that are following you, or those that are helping you along the way, and all those things. I know we have self-made millionaires and self-made billionaires, and everybody talking about how they've done things on their own. You can be the visionary, but you need someone who's operational. You could be the operational leader, but you don't have vision. You can't see past your own problems or issues. I think the biggest thing we all need to recognize, and I'm still in a learning and growing phase and process, but the one thing that we need to realize is that the responsibility that comes behind leadership always speaks to who you are and what kind of character you have. Recognize that leadership is not loud. It's really forged in those quiet moments, the times where no one else is looking. You've heard integrity being something when no one else is around. That's where you shape who you're going to be as a man, who you're going to be, as a father, a husband, a confidant, a mentor, and all those things in between. So I hope that this sits with you in a way that we can begin the journey together, along with my journey, so that you guys can see where I'm headed, and also where I would like to see young men go in the future as well. With all that being said, see you guys in the next video.